Board games, we might be talking about board games, but I'm not gonna shout. We are talking about genetics and how this might be in this thing that you call a board game. We'll talk about a few by name. We'll talk about how they use different means to explore the world of the genes. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. is UK time for Busy Beats and Board Game Bladder, episode 919. And how can we bring genetics to gamers? And this is a topic that Daniel, who I chatted with a few days ago, wanted to explore. So thank you for coming on, Daniel.
Thank you for having me again.
Um, So, can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts around this topic? We've had a bit of a chat off camera with, Messenger and everything about what exactly this means. And it's still a bit of a thorny topic that I think isn't going to be settled today. None of these how to do X are going to be the final word, but it's just starting the conversation. But what are you wanting to talk about?
Wow, going straight into it. Okay, just to reiterate who I am. Hi, I'm Daniel. I am currently doing a PhD in genetic epidemiology. That means that I try and find parts of the genome that are linked to disease on a population level. I study many people's DNAs and try and find patterns in them. So now, one thing that's important in my field as a researcher is, got some notes here, is science communications. That's an area that interests me particularly alongside my work, right? Most people in research see that as outreach, which is the idea of delivering talks to younger people who've not gone to uni yet, or give out workshops, and those are pretty good ways to talk about my work. But I do feel that that's kind of limiting, especially as not everyone gets along in a classroom setting.
Because I guess also it's a very much one-to-one scenario. It's not, I mean, sure, you can do online videos where any number of people could reach you, but it's maybe not as mass-produced as a board game can be.
And I feel that with the, I've explored like other ways of communicating research in a novel, engaging way, things like podcasts and streaming. And yeah, I've wondered if that can be applied to board games. And yeah, I guess so. I mean, where exactly do we start with this, Bez?
I mean, I just wanted a quick overall topic. So it sounds like this is coming from a place of you've got this knowledge, you want to share it with people because other people's lives would be benefited from having this knowledge. And how can we impart it in a way that is easy to understand, that's palatable, that people want to engage with, and could that be done with games? So is that a fair representation of what we're talking about today?
Yes.
Okay, so before we get into all of that, I would like to take a few minutes to first go back and talk about our recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So yesterday I had the pleasure of going to SorCon. It's a 3-day convention on Friday, Saturday, Sunday up in Essex in Basildon, and I was a while back thinking, oh, maybe I'll go to Cannes. But anyway, I wasn't doing much. Stephen had reminded me, hey, this is happening. Maybe you want to come over. And then I invited a friend to say, hey, do you want to actually go over together? The two of us travelled from Waterloo, went over there, and I took a few games with myself. I took Three Laws of Robotics, and which I hadn't played at the time, Growl, which I hadn't played enough to really pass judgments on it, and I took a few games of my own, including one prototype. And it was just lovely, even though I was there expecting to play more of other people's games. I'm glad I took so many of my own because I think that there were a lot of people who were in a situation of, oh, I'm feeling a little bit out of my depth. It felt like a mixture of people who were stuck into these 2 hour, 3 hour epic games, people who had their established groups of friends, and then a small number of people who were kind of mulling around, if you know what I mean. And it was obviously coming and not knowing that many people, not being there as a publisher, which is kind of unusual for me to go to a convention and not actually be doing something. It was nice to jump into a game of Dixit. Then we played Red 7, a lovely game of work. It's very tactical. Have you played Red 7? There's not much strategy, to be honest. It's kind of chaotic, vague tactics, but just do the best that you can this turn. And then Zendo, a game that I absolutely love, and playtested my new game about auctioning cubes after winning an auction to become the auctioneer. So it's a new twist on auctions where the auctioneer wins all the money that was bid, but before that, you need to have a blind auction to become the auctioneer. So, how much do you think other people are going to bid for this? Do you want to bid to be the auctioneer and hopefully generate income, or do you want? And then we played a few other games. Yeah, Growl was good fun. We played that a couple of times. Three Laws of Robotics feels like a good game, but a bit unfocused. And yeah, also played a couple of my others, including some my highlights. It was firstly someone coming over and saying, "Hey, would you sign a copy of Wibble Plus Plus?" And I'm repeating this, although it sounds like I'm showing off, but that's not a usual thing that happens to me. So just someone saying, "Hey, can you do this?" And if you find me at a convention where I'm not doing much, then I will be happy to do so. But yeah, also someone had a deck of Yogi mixed with Innerbind expansions, mixed with Innerbind
Whoa.
Junior, mixed with Yogi Guru, so all of them jam packed into one. And I'd never played that before, so that was really interesting. And hello to Doric, who says, I love the role playing in Bez's new auctioneering game. Thank you very much, Doric. That's lovely of you to say. And so, yeah, that was a lovely day. Got back stupidly late. Was home like maybe 12:45. We got the 11 o'clock train. It was, yeah. But that was my recent highlights. A lovely day. How about you? Have you had a lovely day as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, today's really nice hearing about your auction game going super well because I'm a fan of Going Gone, another auction game. So
By
I'm looking
Scott
forward to.
Nicholson, one of the very few dexterity options. Yeah.
Yeah, really. So yeah, I'm looking forward to eventually getting your take on an auction game. As for highlights for yesterday, I've been doing everyone's favorite game, a game that's important to everyone, exercise, and uh, I've been getting back into sort of medium distance road running, and it's been a bit of a challenge, given that my uh, I fell down like a while back and scraped my right knee, and it's been taking its time to heal. But I feel like I know how to stretch it right. I know how to prepare myself properly and the right pace and technique. And I feel like I'm able to get back up to 5K in 25 minutes. So I feel very good about that.
Nice. And yeah, it's definitely important to do all the stretching and make sure that you keep, yeah, being kind to your body, but also pushing yourself in a gentle way. And so, well done with that. And
Thank you.
talking about exercise and running, would you say that that is a brilliant thing? Brilliant thing. It's a little thing which is brilliant.
Uh, The specific brilliant thing I want to talk about, turning it around from last time, was I said basically others, and today I want to say I want to be thankful for my past self, uh,
Hmm.
and uh, and specifically about the idea of looking back and reflecting on the things that have happened in the past, and uh, given that. I think I mentioned last time that I'd been feeling down and reaching out to connect with others. Yeah,
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 yeah.
and so with that, as well as looking at my past self, thinking about the things that I've experienced, the things that I have done, uh, where I am right now, and what I can take away from it, and I think that. I need to be thankful for my past self for always being able uh, to push me to take stock of things and reflect and to give me that desire to keep going forward, knowing that there are new things to do, new mistakes to make, and new things to always try. So yeah, brilliant thing is my past self,
Yeah,
my
that's a
cringe.
good.
Yeah,
I like that because sometimes I can talk about my blessings. I mean, for example, a lot of the situations that I'm in, and we can't be too egotistical about it. We can't say everything is down to our past selves because we have to obviously accept luck and whatever. But I think it's good to be give gratitude and say and take ownership and say, you know what, those things that were done, that's kind of me. I mean, my past self and my present self are kind of currently, well, it's a weird thing, the sense of self, and whether that's each moment is a different self or whether they are one and the same. But for sure, I think that we need to be grateful to for all the things that we have done, and that's something that we don't maybe take stock of often enough. So that's truly beautiful. Thank you. Now, back to the main topic. As always, anyone who's watching, please do comment, ask questions, fun like follow, and along the way, that's why I do these things live. So, Daniel, we were going to, I think, maybe explore these free games, maybe one at a time, explore what they've done, and then talk about what could be done, talk about genius games, and how does that sound?
sure, that sounds like a good plan.
Okay, so we've already talked about Alchemists, but for those who haven't played it, can you give us a quick rundown of how that works and how it relates to um, exploring the scientific method?
Hmm. Okay. My elevator pitch is basically that congratulations, you've bought an alchemy pot, and you're a budding alchemist, and you've got 7 days until the big showcase, and you basically got to figure out an entire field of science in six in-game turns, and basically become the best alchemist in the world. And you do that by collecting ingredients, researching what they do by testing the combinations of ingredients into potions on yourself or a student. If they get poisoned, you have to pay them. Once you figured out what each potion does, you try or kind of figure it out. You publish it in. You pay the publisher to publish your findings. If other people think you're wrong, you can debunk them, refute them, crash their reputation, and bring yours rising up. And of course, there's also selling potions. And I guess there's a that's the short. That's the kind of short end of it, really. I feel that this entire game crystallizes the entire uh, biochemical research experience distilled in a way that is not only conveys the core essence of it, researching, publishing, and showcasing your potions, as well as trying to turn a profit. But also, it doesn't shove it in your face. It has the theme of alchemy and fantasy, and that's why it's like one of my favorite games of all time. It's magical in that particular way.
And so you touched upon the fact that it takes this real world scientific method, and just in case folk didn't catch it, it's all about checking on the app. Okay, I'm putting these ingredients forward. Okay, what results do I get? And then you have a look, you consider, you ponder, you make deductions, you make inferals, you make assumptions, and then you test those assumptions. And that's what science is all about. So it's exactly encapsulating the scientific method, which is fantastic. But the scientific method, it's interesting because it is a process, it's a set of procedures, and it seems almost uniquely perfect for translating into a game, which is, after all, a series of things that you do. And so, do you think that we'll talk about this later on, but do you think that the scientific method is something that's just better suited to a game than teaching raw information? Like, teaching, hey, here's how genes intermingle, or here's how the periodic table is formulated, or here's how evolution might have happened. Do you think that games, by their very nature, are about affordances, limitations, and so better to capture the feeling, the essence of a process with?
I do think that I do agree with all that when what you said, that games are trying to explain the process through play is probably uh, ingrained in some folks' minds than other. Games aren't for everyone. I've there are some people I've struggled to really get to play because they just don't really see the appeal of it. But for those that do, and like maybe struggle to like force themselves to focus in the same space because it's intense, and you got to remember these facts for whatever big exam you got to write up, and just sort of cram in your head and just splurge on whatever exam paper you got. That's not for everyone, and I don't think is exactly fun. I think part of what makes games magical is the power of choice, right? You're role playing the researcher, the alchemist, the scientist. You're doing the deductions by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, from a thematic point of view, the key question is who are you and what are you doing? And you say exactly that. Like, even though you're transposed to this fantastical setting, which does absolutely imbue it with a lot of magic, you are still a researcher. You are taking on the role and doing exactly what that researcher would do.
Yes, the power of choice cannot be understated in games, and what that gives to the player in not only living at the consequences of their action of buying a periscope or what have you, but just that I'm choosing to research, and just that kind of power in choice.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because the kind of parallel that you could draw between the player in Alchemists versus a researcher, it feels a lot stronger than most other games that are evocative of an activity. For example, if you're going into a cave or if you're actually farming, it's not really about the choices that you make. It's about the hard graft. It's about building up the physical experience somewhat. I mean, that's a big chunk of it. And you can't really say that any football board game is really going to make you feel like you're playing football. But when you play Alchemists, would it be correct to say that the researcher, it is fundamentally down to very similar decision processes that the player experiences in Alchemists.
Yes, I mean time management in any field of research when you're given like a limited set of actions to do stuff, uh, that is all the whole research experience is built into the game design, and that's why it's incredible as a piece, and as a yeah, it's incredible as a piece. Period.
Well, I just want to double check that I've got the correct game for our next one. So, Genotype, is this the game that you were talking about?
Yes, that is the that is the game I'm talking about.
So, can you explain what's going on here for people who are as ignorant as I am?
Full disclaimer, I do own the box myself. Unfortunately, you can see it's not been opened yet, so I'm ashamed as a genetics researcher and a board gamer. But I can say that yep. I'm ashamed about that. So what I can tell you is that Genotype is, as a game about Mendelian genetics, is meant to take the history of the first geneticist, Mendel, who did crossbreeding experiments with peas, and basically turn that into a whole board game experience. In 5 turns, you've got to basically grow plants. You got to basically try and identify which genes exist in which plants. And the clever aspect is like this, the dice, the work, the sort of semi placement aspect is that when you roll these dice, you're simulating the potential breeding outcomes for these plants, and that symbol is really clever because in game that you have to basically re-roll those dice, and they can act as wild cards, which is for matching plants in the pool of genetics that you have, but also in that simulates the sort of sort of genetics concept, the crossing over chiasmata, where in long story short, in certain kinds of cell division, as in sometimes DNA gets swapped over, and that basically allows a bit more randomization of the genes. And to see that in a game is really cool for me.
And now I think we wanted to explore genius games as a broader concept, the idea of making games which are specifically about this thing. And I've got to say, like, looking at the box, looking at the cards, it does draw me in. And this is just gorgeous. What's prevented you? What's prevented is a strong word, but what is it that stops you from playing this game? Is it and prioritizing the time for it? Because that's what we have to do ultimately. It's about making the time for things. So why is this game less of a priority? Is it that you feel you already know the topic? Is it that it comes across as less appealing in some way?
Simply put, it's just a case of it's the answer very literally is 2020. Of course, I think I backed this game a while back, and
it did come out in 2021 for those unaware.
Yes. It's and not finding anyone to play it with is a big problem. I mean, it's annoying because it does have a solo mode, and I guess that is actually a big question. So I guess what's stopping me preventing from playing it is not wanting to break the seal quite yet. and I want to make that a very special moment whenever I play the first guy. And two, I guess I am incredibly familiar. I am. It feels like I'm trying to balance. This goes on the sort of basic level of genetics. I'm kind of trying to balance what outreach projects I want to look into, and I think at the time trying to add board games on top of the stuff I was looking at on the sort of broader level, because genetics isn't quite genetic epidemiology. But it's I think it is literally just trying to make time while balancing other commitments with my work and other stuff.
I mean, I totally get it. Like, I rarely take the time for solo gaming, to tell the truth. And I was actually talking to Kirsten, where there's a lot of solo testing that I could be doing for solo games. And sometimes when I'm all alone, like, the truth is that I do fall into the trappication of being like, okay, I'm going to just watch some videos and take the easy route. And yeah, that's never great. But yeah, actually today, you know what? On my to-do list, I'm watching some videos that are going to be deleted tonight. So maybe while I'm watching them, I will do some solo testing of some word games that I've got to work out scores for. But yeah, I agree, Doric, that it is a really cool idea. And I'm going to refer back to my review of Periodic, where I said that I felt like an abstraction of an abstraction was just unengaging, because as useful, hello Timmy, lovely to see you, as useful as the periodic table might be, it's still an abstraction of the real molecules and what's going on in the world. So to have an abstraction of this abstraction feels super dry, whereas an abstraction of how things are crossbred, or an abstraction of, okay, here's how subatomic particles fuse together, that actually gets me a bit more excited. And I'm like,
I see.
Well, but so I don't want to talk negatively of Genius Games at all, and I would love to try some of their other things. I'm going to say that, not much else to say. It feels like on there. So shall we move on to the next one, which I believe is Evolution by North Star Games? Dominic Krapuschetz. Dominic Krapuschetz, I believe, is the designer. I should get out of the habit of, but even though it's self-published. But yes, so I have played this one, and tell us, so in this one, I understand you're putting creatures together, and then you change your creatures, and you're trying to make the best creatures, and some creatures will be able to feed on other creatures. Is that a decent overview?
I guess it has been a long time since I've played Evolution. I remember having a crack at the climate expansion, and yeah, just the I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in it with adding defining your creature by traits that you pick and choose, and then being involved in building an entire ecosystem. There are a lot of fun mechanics about that I think really capture the imagination.
Now, critics have mentioned that Evolution isn't really a game about evolution, but it's really a game about intelligent design. And because the players playing this game are making the choices, and that's obviously not how evolution works. And to actually make a game about evolution would be to almost reduce your autonomy and agency within the game somewhat. How do you put these two things together?
Oh God, goodness, that is a very fair criticism, and I don't know. It definitely seems goodness. It definitely seems almost impossible because even if you like, I think there's some role playing games that have tried to convey this concept. I think one was called Primal Savagery. But yeah, there is an intrinsic problem with trying to give player agency to something that is supposedly cosmically nihilistic in that it is a consequence of random occurrence that we've got to this position where we're here talking to each other on the computers that we've made. So I'd love to go into that topic, but I do not have an answer at this point in time.
That's totally fair, but I do love the idea of evolution being this cosmically nihilistic thing, and everyone who believes in evolution should start wearing more black. Or that seems terrible. No, I don't want to start wearing more black. Let's continue wearing whatever colors we want. But and if you, yeah, let's and on August the 13th, everyone should wear red.
Mm.
That's my birthday, by the way. I, yeah, I feel like I'm sure I put that information out there somewhere. Anyway, but yes, so what do you think is the good in evolution? So we've talked about the contradiction in terms, but what does it do well that it actually teaches people, would you say?
I think of like all these kinds of games. Vocab. The only thing that Alchemist doesn't do compared to what Evolution does is vocabulary. I like to think it sort of is a launching point for understanding concepts around evolution because you can talk. You've the kind of options you get in it are you can. I think in the flight expansion you get wings. In the base game you can get stuff like horns, scales, and being exothermic. Even carnivore is a something that I think is quite common language, but I don't want to assume. And to have a game as a launching point for folks to explore is really useful. It's a great tool for tangential learning, I like to think.
And I guess it kind of reminds me of the flavor text on a lot of deck construction games, where it's like this bit that you might read. And honestly, like, I know the name for a large group of rhinos. It's a clash of rhinos. And the
Mm.
only reason I know that is because of deck construction games, because it's the name of a card. Clash of Rhinos. It's a cool name, right? And
Mm.
so you get to learn these things. And there have been stories of people who've expanded their vocabulary by playing such games in English. And indeed, yeah, it feels like these free games are doing things in slightly different ways. Where
Mm.
Alchemists, if we reflect, Alchemists takes the activity that scientists do and transposes that almost one for one into a board game, but then massages it and puts it in a brand new setting and gives you similar objectives, but still, yeah, I'm not going to lie, obviously simplifies it and simplifies the process to a level that a normal person can understand within the scope of an hour rather than spending months or years or whatever on it. Because I'm sure that finding a vaccine for COVID was a lot harder than winning a game of Alchemist. Um,
Mm.
but then evolution goes the other way, where there's almost nothing within the mechanisms that's actually a one-to-one direct correspondence with the original source material, but it's meant to be vaguely evocative of the theme to say, yeah, things change, and that happened. And in this game, things will change and the strongest will survive. But yeah, there's so many differences that if you take it too literally, then you're going to be actually misguided, and it might fall into that thing of, oh, what's that whole scenario where you believe that you have more knowledge than you do? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, the Capgras delusion or something like that.
Possibly. But and then Genotype and everything by Genius Games is the one where they've tried to not only, yeah, try to, well, it's from what I you said from after skimming the rules, it's simul.
So sorry, I just looked it up quickly. Capgras delusion is thinking that your family's an imposter. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the
That's
one
the
where you're
one. That's the
smarter.
one. Dunning-Kruger effect. Yes, that's the one. Thank you very much, Dunning-Kruger. Um, and
Sorry, I interrupted your trail.
no, but Genotype, from what you said, it sounded like it does do both of the things. But then the slight issue that we were going to raise is: are these games from Genius Games going to actually appeal to enough people? And does it sort of turn away people who are coming primarily for entertainment and see learning as a sort of, oh, well, I'm not so interested. You know what? That's for kids. I'm beyond that. I'm an adult. And are those kinds of people ever going to be open to learning? I mean, would those people learn through alchemists, do you think?
I mean, in a state of play, you can't exactly force people to learn or educate on it. You can't force people to learn or to be, well, basically to do anything. The importance is,
Mm,
huh?
I would
Oh,
disagree because in a state of play, I mean, look, games are not unguided play. Well, they can be, but I think that as soon as you bring a goal into the game, as soon as you say, okay, this is what you're trying to do, you are trying to play cards in sequential order and time it so that your cards come down correctly, or you're
mm,
trying to contort, or you're trying to get the most points, or you're trying to auction off things and get lots of money, whatever. You
mm,
learn how to maximize your opportunities for victory because
mm,
people are naturally striving towards victory. And so, in
mm,
this goal, even when the goal isn't explicitly stated in a role playing game, I would say that people will inevitably learn to be better storytellers.
mm.
In yogi, I would say that people inevitably learn to be marginally more flexible or to endure that physical perseverance. I would say that in most Euro games, you inevitably learn to plan ahead and strategize. So I would argue that yes, you can force learning, but what you cannot force learning with is the flavor text and the text.
Mm.
The that part you cannot force the learning of, but the as much as those trappings, the graphics, and everything does make the game more beautiful and engrossing, you cannot force that, but you can force the learning of the actual activity you're engaging in.
Yes, that's very much more accurate than I guess what I was getting at. Yeah, there is a implicit contract within playing a board game that you want to understand the rules to play, and yeah, there are. I think, yeah, that makes me appreciate Alchemist more because when you want to play the game of Alchemist, you are learning the core concepts of what it means to be a scientist without being shoved, uh, forced in your face. Uh, hmm, goodness.
So, what we're kind of coming to the conclusion of, if there is to be any conclusion, is that um, cerebral occupations are uniquely placed to have slightly simplified models which still manage to capture the essence of what's going on in that decision making process.
Hmm.
And I guess you could argue that it doesn't need to be limited to cerebral stuff. I mean, if you want to expand this to physical games, then you could also have simplified versions of, physical occupations where you have, but I think that physical games can be a lot more off-putting to most people. And so we were going to talk about how it could be done and what could be improved. So, what would you say are there any traps? Are there any problems that a designer or a publisher might run into when making something like this? What would be the main problems that come to your mind?
So I think one of the careful things to balance out uh, is scientific accuracy versus fun, right? Oh, because it's important if you're trying to if you're trying to sort of find a way to talk about research or scientific concept. Uh, there is a need for I believe there is a need for specific specific terminology to try and convey the idea in a shorthand form rather than repeating deoxyribonucleic acid over and over. That's why you have DNA for short. Uh, though to detract that from the fun, to rent, yeah, you gotta be careful if trying to like bog down in the theme or convey the right scientific terms may bog down the actual play, the state of play, and I mean that's where I'm kind of stuck with at this point in terms of balancing out. I like to think.
Mm-mm. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And so it makes me think that maybe rather than explore the way that DNA mutates and crossbreeds, representing them with fantastical creatures, I mean, something like, I mean, setting like dungeon pets, but you're crossbreeding them. I mean, it makes me wonder if a true evolution game should ultimately be a betting game. Because it almost feels like a true evolution game should be okay, evolution is going to happen, and at the start, or at some point, you kind of bet on which is going to be the dominant species. Because we're players, I mean, we don't guide anything, it just sort of happens, and then,
Mm.
but we can make assumptions of what it'll look like. Maybe those will be right, maybe those will be wrong. But then, of course, the problem is that, yeah, could that work? An evolutionary betting game? And
Mm.
we just kind of have a bunch of different um, creatures and we bet on which ones will evolve the best and survive.
Yeah, I mean, this has been really great in actually verbalizing what I kind of feel both fascinated and slightly off-put about games that feature the concept of evolution. This has been really insightful for me.
But
Hmm?
yeah, so but what's about betting evolution? Is that a good idea or is that a terrible idea for reasons?
Hey, that this puts the players could be like, I don't know, some divine forces, and you're trying to bet on which species is gonna get to fire first, and then it's almost like retheming of a horse betting racing game,
Mm-mm-mm.
which might be fun.
Does now I don't want to offend all the theists out there,
Hmm.
but if we are talking about divine beings and if the players are representing divine beings, is that at odds with the notion of evolution?
Hmm. Well, I mean, the implication is that, uh, hmm. Well, it depends on what kind of fantasy. you're trying to purvey in the first place. When I was thinking about a betting game and I was thinking about divine beings, the implication is that creation is left to run on its own, and we're just and they're all just like betting on doing horse betting and hoping that 20 sons on horses becoming the most dominant species. And I mean I find that a fun thing to say and appreciate that if it may be a bit it might be a bit controversial to theist folk. I appreciate that. And
I'm not. Yeah, I'm happy to explore this topic. I mean, don't. When I said, obviously, like I've got, well, not obviously, but I do have some very good friends who are theists, and I think that, yeah, the idea of saying, okay, you're on it's on your own. It's just, I was wondering if these two concepts are compatible. But I feel like that's maybe a bigger topic than we have time for today. I have loved the bits of exploration that we've had. If there's any topic, I see there's a few people watching, so if there's any questions that you've got, please do chuck them into the chat. Otherwise, I would like you, Daniel, to ask a question if that's possible. It could be to do with this. Or is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I guess before the question, I did have a fun brainstorm of an idea on creating the Richard III Discovery board game, which was because I have one of the professors in my uni. They were involved in actually genetically identifying Richard III, which I know that's given me a fun idea to brew on conceptually. But yeah, I guess a question for you, and
Actually,
I saw,
before we go to the question of the day, I realized that one thing that we didn't cover is you mentioned this very briefly, but genetic epidemiology. So that's to do with the influence of genes on diseases. Is that basically what it is?
Specifically DNA, because shocking thing. Most of the DNA of the human DNA within the entire body is not genes. They are more often structural, if not, and don't code for proteins. And which is why I should specifically say finding parts of the human DNA that are associated with disease and testing like many people on a population level.
Okay, that's a whole other kind of worm. So DNA is not your gene. So, but your DNA is it still a construct of an amalgamation of your two parents, your two biological parents?
Functionally, yeah. It is. There are occasional changes that occur before birth. I talked about the crossing over as part of the genotypes dice. That happens sometimes, and that shuffles DNA around. So, and along with other things that may.
And is that technically considered a mutation? All of these things being shuffled around is technically.
That's not a mutation. That's just shuffling around. Mutations are slightly different things that can occur for many reasons that I could lecture about.
And probably not due to being exposed to radioactivity, as the comics would have you believe.
That's one thing, and there are others.
So, yeah, is there anything? My final question to you before we wrap up
Yeah.
is there anything about genetics, DNA, genetic epidemiology? What are the main misconceptions that people have that anyone might have that you'd like to set straight?
Uh, uh, hmm. Oh, phew.
Sorry to
Uh,
throw this on you.
no,
I
I just
understand
try.
that you
I just trying
prefer
to
a wee bit
think.
for preparation.
I'm just trying to think. What is uh, what might be the misconception? I mean, I've told you about the genes one, right? Already, I guess.
Yes, that genes are not DNA.
No, not all. All genes. Okay. All genes are made of DNA, right? But not all
Yes.
DNA is genes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, genes are a subset of DNA.
That's correct.
Okay. And but there's nothing else that rushes to your mind. It seems like just a topic that everyone has to take the time to explore, and maybe games can be a part of that. But um, so you were about to ask, I believe, before I interrupted you, the question of the
Uh,
day. Question of the
oh
day.
yes.
Here's a little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
So yeah, part of why I came on here was also, I guess, to pick your brain about something. Uh, so do you have any tips on getting into like a daily streaming schedule like you have? Because yeah, as I said, thinking about science communications, thinking about streaming as one, and yeah, I wanted anything that you've taken away from your experience doing this show for well over 919 episodes.
Um, I would say at this point, I would say that unless you have a need to do something on a daily basis, unless it's actually going to see a definite improvement for you, consider what schedule makes sense to you. For me, doing something every day is easier mentally than saying, okay, I'm going to do it once a week. And especially if it's just me, if I do it every day, then it's okay, I've got to do this thing every day. I'm able to take pills every day because it becomes part of my routine, even though it's still something that I have to think about. It's like, okay, I get my vitamin water, I put all the vitamins in the little thing, and then I have that, and there's something that it's important for me to take daily. Now, if that pill had been a weekly pill, I think that would be much more difficult,
Mm.
for me at least. And that's why, unless I've organized something with other people, I would rather have things be either daily or whenever. I would say if you're considering streaming every day, why? I mean, the reason that I wanted to do it was because I was struggling to get out of bed during the pandemic.
Mm.
And then I kept doing it and was like, you know what, I'm enjoying this. People occasionally come on and it's offering me an opportunity to chat to people that I enjoy doing. And I'm now winding it down, partially because, okay, 1,000 is a big milestone, partially because I'm going to be emigrating and I need to stop at some point, and partially because, yeah, I'm getting tired of it, and I would, yeah, it feels a bit odd to some of the quick chats on my way to Friday daytime playtesting. I'm actually proud of, don't get me wrong, and some you can probably tell by the titles of the things. If it's a statement, that's something that I've thought about, and you can probably read that and say, oh, that's an interesting thing. Do I agree? I'm not sure. And either you agree, and that gives you all the information you need, or if you don't agree, then listen to my rant and maybe I'll convince you. Occasionally, it might just be me filling time, and every day, is that a worthwhile thing? I would say, does routine fill you with joy? Are you going to be excited to do these things? If not, why are you doing it daily? If you are committed to doing it with a regularity, I would also say that if you're doing it for an audience, doing it weekly or twice a week is actually probably going to get more people watching. Because I do believe that if you're doing it every day, much as it might be nice to think, oh, people will know I'm there at 10 a.m. UK time, which does mean that people do know I'm going to be there at approximately 10 a.m. UK time. And it's lovely to see Timmy join in, and um, lovely to see other people who occasionally pop by. It also means that there's no specialness. There's no, okay, tonight is the night for this. And it's a big ask for someone to bring you into a daily routine. But if you
Mm.
say, okay, this is my thing and it's a weekly thing and I'm going to do a quick, I would also say that for yourself, maybe if you have the willingness to do editing, then that's always going to result in more people watching your video. I think there's a reason why 3 Minute Board Games is one of the channels that's doing the best out there, because people value their time. And I myself, I would much rather watch um, Jay for 3 minutes than watch 3 minutes of one of my streams. There's no doubts in my mind about that. And if I've got 10 minutes, then yeah, I'd rather watch two of their videos than 10 minutes. But okay, if I've got a long time, then okay, that's a time for a stream. But how often do we have a long time? And that's the reality. And so I would say that, sure, if you start saying, okay, I'm going to do a stream and I'm going to treat it more like a talk, treat it more like a lecture, that might be something that you can do. But yeah, I would encourage you to also consider, just if it's for the purpose of outreach, then I would encourage you to do highly edited videos if that's something that you can be bothered with, basically, because there's no doubt that one of Jay's videos takes, yeah, almost typically it takes less time than one of my videos. I mean, it obviously there are some of my videos that I do minimal research for. There are some of my videos like the ones with Alan Paul where I actually spend a long time and researching a whole bunch of games for us to chat about. But yeah, does that help? Does that answer the question?
I think so. That gives me an idea of, I guess, what got you into this in the first place, as well as thinking about what I might be wanting to do with it. But yeah, that's
And
helpful.
because I do like to make the question of the day something that everyone out there can answer, my question to everyone out there is, what do you do that you do on a daily thing? I'm going to assume that um, there are routines that everyone does every day, like breathing, like walking, at least a couple of, well, sorry, I that's a bit yeah, I'm just suddenly right. Yeah, there are people who just cannot walk, but you know, but like sleeping, most people do that every single day. But
Hmm.
what would you say is the most unusual thing that you do on a daily basis? And that's my question to you. What's the most unusual thing that you do on a daily basis? For me, it would certainly be streaming. And do you have something, Daniel, that is the most unusual thing that you do on a daily basis?
Uh, well, I don't know if it's oh,
I mean, it might be even an exercise routine or some a little. Okay, I always check myself in the mirror, or I don't know, to make sure
I
to take
mean,
a walk.
something that I'm guaranteed to do every morning is go on social is wake up and go on social media before I actually get up and do breakfast. I don't know if that's unusual, but that is something that I know that I for certain do every single day.
Wow. Yeah, I think I'm curious to hear anything from anyone out there, but I'm also curious, anyone out there, over to you. What are you up to? You can share what's if you want to. What are you up to today? I have a whole to-do list that I wrote, and basically my to-do list today was get outside, which I managed to do very quickly, stream pills, and just watch some videos, do some have a proper cycle or walk outside and do something else, which I think is going to be some solo testing whilst watching those videos. I did, yeah, that's the bulk something that I'm going to be up to. What's something that you're up to, Daniel, and anyone else watching?
Today, I was thinking about doing some more grocery shopping, but also I need to
Oh.
prepare. I need to prepare the house for some guests that are coming tomorrow. So it's quite busy today, just trying to get everything sorted.
Yeah, I know how, yeah, tidying and organizing can be a lot. And hello, Mike. It's lovely to see you. Good morning to you. I hope you're generally well. And you're catching up as I'm just about to recap and wrap up before we finish up. So, to recap and wrap up, we talked about how you're studying genetic epidemiology, how this gives you a deeper understanding and appreciation of all these games. We talked about my auctioning game, going to SorCon, talking about exercise, loving the past self, enjoying Alchemists, how it's a 1-to-1 ratio of the activities that you do and the activity that it will teach you about the scientific method. Talking about genotype and the way that it is telling you about this one thing, but co- potentially making it so that fewer people are going to be excited by this. Evolution, where it's all about generating the vocabulary, but then at the same time, remembering that agency is not evolution because true evolution is cosmically nihilistic. We talked about like the Dunning-Kruger effect and whether that could be in place where people learn a little bit about stuff, about learning versus agency, the notion of accuracy versus fun, the idea of a betting game about evolution, a reminder that genes are just a subcategory of DNA. And, you know, epidemiology, genetic epidemiology is all about how the DNA turns into disease, not just genes, despite what the name would have you believe. And then we got into some tips, or I would say more reflection on the nature of daily streaming. And we talked about if there's any activities that you do every day beyond, yeah, just eating at least something and sleeping and breathing. Because, yeah, breathing is definitely something that everyone does without exception. um, I guess we could go into a whole lots of involuntary things that everyone does every day. But yes, that is the recap and wrap up. And lots of love to everyone. If you want to check me out, I am, of course, Stuff by Bez in all of the places. And if you want to know some of my streams that are forthcoming, some of them will just get decided in the morning where it's a solo stream. And yeah, but there are a bunch of guests lined up until I reach episode 1,000. And if you've got any ideas for guests, then please let me know. If you want to check out Daniel, where would you like to be found?
I mean, my personal chill Twitter is CHUN_WA40. That's Chun underscore wa 40. That's my Twitter handle. And yeah, uh, that's uh, that's where you can find me. Not really posting about genetics, more about gaming, but I do retweet stuff occasionally, genetic stuff occasionally. So and yeah, that's where I am.
And I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's been watching, whether you've chimed in with an occasional message along the way, or whether you've just been, pardon me, lurking. Please, if you found this useful, if you found it interesting, share, spread the word, keep the conversation going. I always reply to all the respectful comments and pass them on to my guests when I see them. And for now, the only thing left to say is lots of love and bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Blue, blue, bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thanks for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye, bye.